Hi, welcome back to my channel. The name of my channel, Julie's Rich Life, may have you thinking, whether I subscribe more to Dave Ramsey or Ramit Sethi. But actually, I pull from both of these financial gurus, so to speak, in deciding how to live my financial life, which is connected to just how you live your life, of course. Dave Ramsey, just on the off chance you are hearing about him for the first time here, has the 7 baby steps. You follow them in order, starting with an emergency fund and ending at just extra investing because you've basically paid off everything and funded everything you need to. Ramit Sethi is known for that tagline, your best life and spending according to what will make up your best life. And then he has some guidelines and not necessarily doing them in order, but kind of taking care of them at once with them. And we're going to get into the specifics of what they recommend doing and what I do considering those recommendations. Okay, a principle that they both share in common is that personal finance isn't just about the math. Like we all know, running up credit card debt and paying a lot of interest is bad, mathematically, but yet people still do it even if they have the option to not do it. And so Dave Ramsey talks a lot about our behavior and like changing our behavior, and he's kind of cut and dry, cold turkey, like your motivation is the end goal and you're just going to do what it takes to get to the end goal, and you're gonna, eat beans and rice is another of his taglines along the way. And then Ramit Sethi also says, it's not just about the math, it's about the psychology. So he talks a lot about, people's childhoods and how that affects their behavior. And we've got to have a handle on our behavior and know like our money triggers, or even for some people, money trauma and how that affects the way we handle money. So that's something they share in common, although the way they deliver the message is quite different, is that it's not all about math. Math is basically simple in finance, although people would have you believe differently, but it's just a lot of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. We can all do it. But it's that behavior and psychology. So that's something that they do both have in common. And I am fortunate that I don't have any money trauma. When my parents needed more money, I did a few times in my life see them like take on side hustles or go get different little jobs when there were layoffs at my dad's company, and I did hear like we don't have money for that from time to time, so I knew there was a concept of you should have money for things. I didn't get much education from my parents. They probably didn't get much financial education from their parents, but my mom did give me a Susie Orman book, which I did read when I was 18 or 19, I think. She didn't end up being one of my gurus or models, but I'm coming into financial life with no, big trauma. Okay, both Dave and Ramit call for an emergency fund. Dave starts with just get $1,000 emergency fund and then move on to eliminating debt. And a lot of people say that's a bad idea, but I agree that a lot of emergencies are $1,000 or less. And if you strive to save 6 months before you pay off debt, that's a lot of interest that could be accruing depending on what your debt is. So I think that is pretty good advice. Of course, that would depend a lot on what your job is and how stable it is. My husband and I are both educators, so it's pretty stable. And then Ramit has you just saving for 3 to 6 months of expenses right from the start. So for our emergency fund, I have actually 4 different funds, which are a medical emergency, car emergency, house emergency, and then replacement of income emergency. And that's something that I just decided to do. Neither of these gentlemen recommend separate emergency funds. I think in the Dave Ramsey world, a lot of those would be called like sinking funds. You just have a sinking fund for your house, a sinking fund for your car. But for my mind, it works for me to have 4 different emergency funds. Hey, if you're still watching, could you please like it? That really helps other people find this video on my channel. All right, credit cards. Dave is famous that you just never own a credit card. And I think for a lot of people that works well, and you can really travel and such with just a debit card. We have done that many times. But once you're control, or if you ever get control of, paying off a credit card every month, it can be very convenient. And, if someone gets your card number of your debit card, they could just drain your account, and it can take like 10 days or more to get all your money back. So credit cards are a little safer in that aspect. I know a lot of people like them for points. I do have a card with points, but I don't think about that a lot. It's just a benefit that happens from using my credit card, and then we do pay it off every month. Okay, investing. Dave says not to start investing until you're out of debt. We were investing in my husband's work account since he first got his job, and it was 8%, and then after we paid off debt, then we do a minimum of 15% investing towards retirement. Ramit says to do that right from the start, 10 to 20% of investing. So I guess I'm exactly on with Dave, although Ramit does say, if you can't even do that 10%, then do 5%. Just get in the habit of doing something. But that's at the very beginning of your financial journey, which is different than Dave. And I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about whether I wish I would have invested more. Obviously, time is our friend with investing, but it was very satisfying to pay off the credit card debt that we did have first. And maybe that depends on how much credit card debt you have, whether you would want to invest simultaneously. I hear a lot of people who kind of graduated from Dave's plan wishing they had invested more at the beginning. So different strokes for different folks. All right, real estate. Dave Ramsey's crazy for real estate. Big goal is to own your home and pay it off as one of the baby steps. And Ramit, is also a multimillionaire, and he still rents. So he says you really have to look at where you live and how you're spending your money, and actually math it up, because it's not always better to own a home. And I do wish we had waited a while to buy our home. We just did because that was the thing to do, and we barely could. And I do wish we had waited till we had more of a cushion in savings before we bought a home. Dave is really he's built his empire with his company, but also his real estate investments. And Ramit does kind of on his podcast make fun of the idea that real estate is this magic passive income, and that it truly is not ever completely passive. And depending on your real estate portfolio, it could just be way better to put that money in an index fund. So they differ on real estate. For me, I kind of tinkered with the idea of buying a rental house, or maybe when I retire, traveling and renting this house out. But when that time comes, I'll have to run the numbers, if it's better to just sell and invest the profits of my house as we travel, or to rent it out, because there's a lot of factors that will go into that decision. I'm not making it until the time comes. But at this point, I don't want a bunch of mortgages on a bunch of houses. I'd rather just invest that in an index fund, which generally outperforms real estate, with some exceptions in some areas from time to time. Oh, but I do consider my own home real estate I have to invest in. So I'm very conscious of just, shelling out the money for a new roof while we're still living here, not waiting till it leaks or I'm selling it and then taking money out of profit to fix our roof, and just really keeping the house, maybe not decor wise or anything, high end, but, we remodeled the kitchen, paid cash for that sort of thing, just taking care of the house. so that when it is time to sell or rent, we're not scrambling to fix it up. So I do consider that investment into my own personal real estate portfolio of the home I live in. All right, both Dave and Ramit recommend that you have rules for like extra money. We'll talk about budget in a little bit, but sometimes life just sends you extra money. It could be like a $50 you overpaid at the doctor and they send you a $50 check. It could be you have a side hustle and you got extra money. So things you're not counting on, but just appear, and then what do you do with that money? So they both suggest you have a plan, so when it comes in, you know what percentage is going where. And so my plan has varied depending on my stage and situation in life. Right now, I'm putting 50% into our Get Busy Living or Get Busy Dying account, which is mainly for travel, and then 25% to pay off my car loan. We'll talk about car loans soon, stay tuned. But I have a small car loan, so 25% of extra money goes towards paying that off. 25% is extra investing because I'm already investing actually above 15% in my budget now. That varies from month to month, but if just like grant money, unexpected money, or money you can't count on comes in, you should have these rules, and that's something Dave and Ramit both agree on, and those are my rules right now. And I recommend everyone have rules, otherwise you might get a $500 check and say, oh, let's go to Target or whatever. And that could be part of your rule. It's like 20% will go out and spend that on a date, or I'll spend that for something from my wish list. That can definitely be one of your rules. Okay, cars. I would say just listening. I don't know if this is official rule or anything, but Dave definitely says, pay cash for your car all the time. And we have paid cash for cash for our Nissan Leaf, which was used but still in good shape, and we really would have preferred to pay cash for a Toyota Highlander, but the only reason we got it is because our paid off car had a tree fall on it. But we used our savings to pay off most of the loan quick, and then I'm just paying off a little bit of the loan. But ideally, the money that I put aside every month towards my car emergency, because we do take care of our cars and we have high quality, the old cars, hopefully that'll eventually be enough money to buy a new car. Well, not a new car to us, because we have no low mileage on our cars. And then Ramit is more like, be reasonable with your income. So if you have a car loan, just make sure that fits into your spending plan. So I would say I'm more in the Dave camp with cars, and that's because I can't think of any time in my life I ever saw a car and felt any kind of emotion. I just am not into cars, and that's probably because we had used and abused cars growing up, and they just don't bring me joy. Also, I don't commute. I walk down the hallway to work, so if you're spending 3 hours a day in your car, you probably would want to have a nicer car. So no judgment there, to each their own. Okay, generosity. Dave says right from the start, when you have your first budget, give away something to get in your habit of being generous with your money, because his belief system is it's not really our money anyway, and we should be sharing it with others. And even though for him, part of that would be the tithe, he says, it should just be generosity towards, others, whether that's a charity or a place of worship. Just be generous right from the start. And Ramit does mention being generous. He mentions a lot being generous with his friends, he likes to take his friends out or take his family all on vacation. He doesn't talk about his personal charitable giving a lot that I've heard yet. But that's just part of your spending plan, is, working in whatever you're going to do. Generosity, he doesn't, to my knowledge, suggest a percentage, whereas Dave says, 10% of your income, and be generous right from the start. And that is something I'm more in the Dave camp with, that it's good early on to just, even if it's $5 to food bank or buying, a couple cans for the food bank. Just be generous right from the start and get in that habit of generosity, because if it's not instinctual for you, you weren't taught that, that might not come easy for you. You might have to practice it. Okay, so budgeting. Dave does talk about spending your money with a zero-based budget and planning. I used to have a worksheet from him that gave like categories of spending, but he does talk about budgeting your four walls, which are your food, your actual housing, your utilities, and then includes transportation, because you need transportation, to get to work, to have your income. But I just tried to find his like printable budget, and it didn't have percentage suggestions on it anymore. I know it used to. And then Ramit Sethi has a conscious spending plan, and he gives broad percentages, particularly breaking down your like necessities and your wants, and that your necessities are fixed expenses, should be a certain percentage. And I think he gives some grace depending on how high your income is, but I think it's like 30 to 50% should be your fixed expenses, and the rest should be flexible spending. If you don't know where to start with your budget or your conscious spending plan, you can go find those resources. They're both free, which is great. And Ramit Sethi does like suggest not having like a super in the weeds budget, whereas for Dave Ramsey, he really like has a lot of categories broken down. And I did in the beginning, and it was just kind of tedious to budget once I didn't have to worry about the month to month anymore. And so now I'm more in the conscious spending plan, and just I have a flexible spending, which is just things like some people might call it miscellaneous. But I used to say okay, these are my subscriptions, and this is how much I might spend on clothing, blah, blah, blah. Because I don't have children to clothe, I don't have to spend money on clothing very often. And so I just have a larger flexible spending. And so that's something I've kind of borrowed more from Ramit Sethi than broader categories. I think the word, budget and conscious spending can make people feel certain emotions. For me, it doesn't really matter. I was consciously spending my budget before. I think it can be really helpful to people not freeze up and feel like they're trapped by their budget, to use that word conscious spending. So I think it is very helpful for both people. So I think that term that Ramit uses can be very helpful for some people. And then zero-based budgeting works just equally well for me, because you are assigning every dollar, although with a conscious spending plan, you're not saying, okay, I'm spending $8 at the coffee shop. It's just more general categories. And a theme with both Dave Ramsey and Ramit Sethi is just living your values. I think Ramit maybe talks specifically using those words more, but that, your budget should reflect what you value. So if you value eating out a lot, Dave might say you shouldn't, especially in the beginning, shouldn't be eating out a lot, rice and beans at home. Whereas Ramit Sethi would say, well, if it's in your conscious spending plan and you can afford it, then if you value eating out, then eat out, and then wear, the same clothes for 5 years or whatever. Maybe you make enough you can eat out a lot and buy fancy clothes. And that's great too. But when you look at your money, then it should reflect your values. And that's something that my no spend month and trying to not spend my paycheck this month is really helping me think a lot about. So I do have a series about my no spend month, and one of the reasons I'm doing that is to kind of reflect on, is my money being spent according to my values? And I've discovered some interesting things during my no spend month that we should look at where our money is going. And are we just spending money because that's the thing to do and that's what our friends are doing, or that's what we see online, or are we spending money according to our values? And so that's something Dave Ramsey and Ramit Sethi both talk about, using different terminologies, and maybe Dave is a little pushier, like with his values, onto other people. But once you're at the other end of the baby steps, then you spend money on whatever you want. All right, thanks for watching. Here is a video YouTube thinks you'll like, and here is a video that I hope you'll enjoy. All right, take care, and I hope to see you in the comments.